for the kind introduction. So now I'm allowed to start. I'm Sonja. Good morning, everyone. I'm from Germany. I work at the Technical University of Aachen, which is in the triangle with the Netherlands and Belgium, because I don't suppose anyone to know Aachen, actually. Yeah, nice. And my research group is focused on ergonomics and human-machine systems. And I have this project that deals with passenger ship evacuations, and we're trying to find technical solutions to ensure that everybody is actually rescued in case of a hazard. Therefore, I would like to draw your attention to the recent developments in the cruise ship domain. Ships are becoming increasingly bigger. They're becoming larger and larger. One example is the Oasis of the Seas. It's a cruise ship that has 16 passenger decks. It has a length of more than 300 meters and a maximum capacity of 6,300 passengers, 2,000 crew members. Taken together, this is more than 8,000 people on a single ship. 8,000 people, if you think about it, that's the population of a small city, actually. However, unfortunately, technical failures and events of disasters can never be fully ruled out, even using modern technology. And the ways to the mustering station are sometimes several hundred meters long. You have a limited amount of time. According to the maritime regulations, it's less than 2 hours, and maybe there might be circumstances necessitating even a quicker evacuation. I mean, the ship can simply be sinking. Then you don't have any more time. And there's another challenge in the characteristic of the passenger ship population. About 72% of the passengers are over 50 years. This is 3/4 of the passengers. And as I just said, the ways to the mustering stations are long. They might be over several floors. There may be stairs. And there's a crowd. And if you think of the crowd in evacuation, they might be pushing, they might be squeezing, they might be scrambling to get through. And for elderly people, this is a high risk to stumble, to fall, and then they might be left behind. But you want to ensure that everyone is rescued, so you have to search for them. You have to search for the people who do not appear at the mustering station. Whether it's because they stumbled, they've fallen, they did not hear the alarm. You don't always use your hearing systems, maybe, if you're older, or you did not get the urgency of the alarm. Therefore, several hundreds of crew members are needed to ensure that people get found, and yet it is hard to ensure it 100% because you have to go through every cabin, you have to go through every corridor, every entertainment facility. Cruise ships are like big cities. There are plenty of entertainment facilities. There are actually technologies that could facilitate finding people. They could facilitate the process, make it actually more efficient, such as wearables, like in form of bracelets with RFID chips. You could more easily identify the location of everyone. However, these bracelets would have to be worn 24 hours a day because obviously you don't know when there will be an evacuation. You don't know when there's an emergency. And there might be acceptance issues. There might be a lack of acceptance for it due to privacy and security concerns of the passengers. Therefore, unfortunately, cruise ship companies hesitate to invest money into expensive infrastructure to enable these these location identification systems. That's where we came in, and we wanted to find out, is there really a lack of acceptance for such safety-enhancing wearables, or can you simply implement the system? At first, we did some interviews with passengers between 30 and 72 years and finding out what they think about it, and we found that people are not all thinking the same. They have some privacy concerns, but it really depends on the personality. So we wanted to do this large survey, and we recruited passengers by a cruise club website. Thereby, we could also ensure that everyone who participated in the questionnaire had actually gone on a cruise trip. And we got 2,085 completed questionnaires back. The gender was roughly balanced, about 50% females, 50% males. The age ranged between 16 and 81 years. So we covered, in my opinion, a quite wide age range of about 65 years, including also elderly people, which is very important because that was what we actually really wanted to look at. Let me just go very quickly through our variables for you. And we included also demographics, age, as it was found in prior literature that the initial intention to use new technologies is lower in elderly people. They hesitate to use new technologies. And gender, for example, females are more careful about submitting information online that is sensitive in their opinion. We also considered personal attitudes, technical enthusiasm, as wearables, of course, they are new, it's a novelty, neuroticism, maybe the one personality trait, if you think of the big five inventory, that is most important, thinking of evacuations, and the felt need for safety. Our dependent variables were defined as privacy concern in the understanding of Smith's dimension of collection, so the identification of the location in the event of an evacuation, but also the tracking, the continuous tracking of the identity of the location data that needs to be done for this technology. And we were interested in the perceived security risk. So if people thought that their data might be accessed without authorization and misused. Then we looked at the data we found in our questionnaires, and we defined inclusion criteria. And we wanted to make sure that the predictors we include for our dependent variables have an error probability below 1%, and they can explain actually more than 1% of the variance in at least one of the dependent variables. Therefore, in the end, we came out with only gender from the demographics and need for safety. That seemed to be relevant here to explain privacy concern and perceived security risk. Now let's move on to the actually interesting part, the results. Privacy concern is really dependent on age. And what we found here is actually contradicting prior research that dealt with interactive systems and found that there was this lower intention to use new technology because elderly people have lower privacy concerns. And privacy concern is negatively related with acceptance with the intention to use. So we found that the older someone is, the lower is the privacy concern. And we forced age into the first step of a stepwise regression analysis because we wanted to make sure that this objective variable can explain as much as it can. And then we added up need for safety to see what this can do for us. And we found that age can explain about 2% of the variance in the privacy concern, and need for safety another 9%. Then we actually first implemented a multiple regression simulation, and this is how it looks like when you try to visualize it. And so this is privacy concern here, depending on age and need for safety. And so privacy concern decreases with increasing age, and it decreases with increasing need for safety. Moreover, age and need for safety have a positive relationship, actually. So this effect becomes even stronger because of this relationship. We did pretty much the same thing for the perceived security risk, and what we found that the influence of age on perceived security risk is even stronger. So there's this really strong negative tendency that we found in perceived security risk the older people get. You remember we had people from 16 to 81 years, so we could extrapolate the data, and we see this negative trend here. It's going strongly downwards here, and we again forced age into a stepwise regression model and found that it can explain 4% of the perceived security risk, and for another 4% can be explained by the need for safety. Putting this into a regression simulation, you can see that perceived security risk is decreasing with increasing age and with increasing need for safety. And again, age and need for safety have a positive relationship, so the effect gets stronger here. I would like to summarize this for you so far. Age can explain some share of privacy concern and perceived security risk. So taken together, they can explain 10.5% of privacy concern and 8% of the perceived security risk. This is not 100%. We cannot explain 100%. We can see that there's definitely a trend. And, well, what we tried to do is we looked at the survey data. We had included some more items and some more questions, some more dimensions, and we tried to build an integrated acceptance model for this technology. So here you see privacy concern and perceived security risk have a negative relation with the intention to use. So the higher privacy concerns and the perceived security risk are, the lower is obviously the intention to use. There are also positive factors like the perceived usefulness. If you think wearables are useful and they will rescue your life and they will actually work in that situation, you are more likely to use it than someone who doesn't think so. If you're trusting the technology, if you have a positive attitude what others think of this technology, so social influence plays actually a very important role here, what you suppose others think of this technology, even not knowing. And we included all the personal attitudes I had talked about before, and we looked at the influences of age. Age had influences on actually every predictor of intention to use, except usefulness. And there are some more relations. It's getting really complicated. And so I'm afraid I cannot explain all of it today. But if you're interested in it, talk to me. We have written another article about this, actually, to have the whole integrated model. For today, I wanted to rather look at privacy and security concerns of people. And well, for now, I would like to conclude. And what we found is, in conclusion, that elderly people have lower privacy and security concerns, so a higher intention to use. And this explains how the intention to use actually looks. We have a very high intention to use such wearables. This looks really high. Actually, it's not even high enough, because to make such a technology really efficient, you need about 95, better 99% of the people wearing it. Otherwise, probably you don't know if those people who need it the most, who get lost, did not wear it, so you have to search anyways. And we found this apparent contradiction, because prior research and our findings, prior research said, okay, there's a low initial intention to use technologies in elderly persons. And we found the higher the ages, the lower are the privacy and security concerns. They actually have a higher need for safety. They're more worried about their life. They're more actually worried about the lives of their spouses, of maybe children going with them. So actually they have a higher initial intention to use these wearables. There are several explanations for it. It could be it's not an interactive system. So we clearly said you don't have to do anything. You simply have to wear this wearable, this bracelet around your breast. So they don't have to interact with it, even if you have computer anxiety, even if you have low technical affinity, it doesn't matter. You don't have to deal with it, just wear it. They're more concerned about their safety. And so what actually came to me afterwards, thinking about these results, is also that there's a risk. There's a risk implied. And this actually really positive data for our project. It looks all very good. We could use this technology, maybe inform people a little better about it, maybe get some motivation, some nice features on it, and people are likely to use that, and we can rescue everyone. That's what we were aiming at. But I also see a risk. And this is for consumer-oriented wearables. We found that older people are not actually that aware of privacy and security issues, especially security issues. If you remember the strongly negative trend, they are not afraid that people misuse their data, that people access their data even without authorization. And, well, from my point of view, you should think about information policy for elderly people, so otherwise there might arise problems in future wearing such new technologies, not being aware of the risks that are implied. This brings me actually to the end of my talk. I would like to thank you all very much, and I'm looking for all the questions you have. Thank you.